I was a bit shocked to see, I think it was 1,200 grievances a month or something when I first arrived, which is what made me think then I need to start having these pod representative meetings so at least we can hear what the grievances are and come up with some solutions. The solutions are very slow though, because change is slow, and one of the big solutions is all the technology that's required and the tablets and those sorts of things. So we've got the grievances right down, but I think everyone is frustrated with how slow. People don't understand so much how slow change is. So it looks like nothing's happening, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes.
Hello everyone, you're listening to Sworn to Serve, an Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office original podcast production. I'm your host, Casey Ferran McGee, along with Sheriff Susan Hudson.
Morning.
You listened to a previous episode where we spoke with Dr. Astrid Birgden, who has been the Chief of Corrections and the Warden at the jail for the past 16 months. And we wanted to bring her on for another episode to share more about the work that's been done in those 18 months. You were originally supposed to be here. Welcome. Again.
Yes.
Welcome. So you were originally supposed to be here for only 6 months.
Yes.
You've been here for 18 months. What made you stay?
Just because the task is such a fascinating one, and it's just such an opportunity to be able to engage and be part of a reform process. And I really like the staff that I've met here, so it's just a great place to work.
It's New Orleans too. I mean, you can't just leave.
Yeah, and I've taken full advantage of New Orleans, as I'm well known to. And yeah, so originally it was 6 months, but I have to go back to Australia.
Right. And Sheriff, tell us a little bit again about why Dr. Birgden was a natural choice and a fit for the work you wanted to be done here.
I ran for sheriff to affect how mental health is treated in the city. And the jail is the de facto mental health institution. We have to change that. But we know that while we have folks there, we know that there's trauma, addiction, and mental health, and we have to set the tone. We have a leader who is a clinical psychologist, which means we are going to be a human services department, and we are going to treat those issues, and Dr. Birgden was the perfect person to do that. She's an international expert. She's set up prisons and jails. She's dealt with people who are in jail for some serious offenses, and so knowing how to treat those, how to kind of rehabilitate folks, I wanted to send that message to our organization.
And talk about the population that we are serving. What is the level of mental health issues in the jail?
So 50% of our residents are receiving psychotropic medication, so they're on medication. Then there'll be another group that's not yet identified, that's probably low-level mental health issues, and I think a hidden population of those with cognitive impairment, which is an area that I specialise in Australia. So they will have intellectual disability, perhaps autism spectrum disorder, fetal alcohol syndrome. So they're people that may be a little bit more concrete in their thinking and not good problem solvers. So don't think in advance the consequences of their behaviour. So I suspect they're a hidden population because we're not assessing people for cognitive impairment as they come into the jail.
And then you also have the trauma.
Yeah, so that's so it's the three-way triangle of trauma, drug addiction, and mental health issues.
And that's a subsect of our community, and it seems as if a concentrated level of it is right here in the jail.
Yes, and so the jail acts as a pseudo-psychiatric hospital because there seem to be no other services for people to access in the community.
So how is the jail situated and set up to service this special population?
It isn't really set up to do that, and I think that's why we see so many issues with it. But by bringing Dr. Birgden here, we're moving towards that. So for instance, we've been wanting medically assisted detox here for a while. I heard about it during the campaign. We heard people were getting ibuprofen and, ice packs and stuff like that instead of, you have to treat those. Those are serious. Detoxing is a serious issue. You can die from detoxing, and then also it can cause all kinds of other behavioral issues. So medically assisted detox is the way you want to go. The federal government was pushing it. Everybody knows that's the best way to go. So we want to have that in we started setting that up, and it's going slowly now. I think we're in the 20 to 30 range of people there, but we didn't have any of it going before, so that's a huge step. And Dr. Birgden can tell you more about our case manager setup and how we're trying to deal with people. So when they leave this jail, I can look out my window and sometimes see people in our orange slippers, because they don't have shoes when they leave. They don't have anything. They might leave with a sandwich. We are trying to stop that. We want reentry now to be something totally different. We assess your most immediate need and try and get you the resources for that.
And what are some of the services that we're now providing that we hadn't been in the past?
So what we've done is we've gone for grant money to fund re-entry programs, and so we're in the process of developing that. We received the grant about 2 weeks ago, almost $1 million. So we're setting up a process where we're going to invite agencies in the community to deliver programs either in the jail for preparation for release or transition to another facility, or providing services outside. So we really need 24-hour support, because you can be released at any moment. If we hold you in here, we get penalised. So we have to let people out 24/7, and so they can be wandering out at 2 o'clock in the morning and heading straight across to go under the freeway bridge, because we don't have support services. So we're setting all that up now.
So what would the services look like? What are some of those things that we would want people to be able to provide?
So we would want mental health support. So already have formed a relationship with those providers. So it's not some new service that you're given the name and number for and told to ring on your way out. So that they would already have a relationship with them. So they will have already come in and introduced themselves to the resident in here, so they know where to go when they're released. Transport's a big issue, so to get transportation so you can go somewhere. The biggest need is housing, so homelessness. We've talked about the possibility of having tiny houses that somebody temporarily can go into while better accommodation is found for them. Drug addiction services, just simply having a bus ticket, or, you know, in Australia you always leave the prisons with a pack that's to support you upon your release.
And what would that include?
Well, then bus tickets, maybe a food voucher, clothes. Some people don't have clothing, and so we've talked about the day reporting centre here has some clothes for people, so setting that up. We've met with employment agencies about giving people jobs. So a lot of my focus since I got here was really forging the relationships with the external stakeholders, because without them we won't succeed. And in terms of, I always say that a secure environment should have a permeable wall that everyone can get in, it's just not everyone can get out, so that it's not a closed system, so that we've been interacting as much as we can with attorneys, support agencies, so that's employment, housing, mental health services, drug and alcohol, in terms of forming relationships with them. And now that we've received the grant money, we can start formalising those processes.
This is really exciting now, because, you know, Dr. Astrid talked about tiny homes and people in the community doing the work, because it has to be community doing the work. First 72 plus, you know, they traditionally help people coming home from prison, but now they're going to pivot and help us as well, and we're a partner to them, providing them with the land. We see the city is putting money into the trying to deal with people without homes, and we know that they're moving forward trying to get people into housing. That we want to work with them and you know, make sure that we can get people to a safe space. So there are resources out there that we really want to connect to. We're all interconnected if you think about it, so this is a good way to try and bring down NOPD's workload and ours as well, if we work with all these folks.
And we also have received funding to support programming inside.
Yes.
So that people, when they do leave here, leave better than when they came.
Yes, so what we're about to do is call out to all the agencies to come with their proposals for delivering programs inside the jail, as well as the programs as they get released.
So what would the programming inside look like, and what would that benefit as far as safety and security inside the facility?
So my goal ever since I got here was to create a safe, secure and humane jail. And so to me the easiest way to put it is happy residents equals safe staff. So boredom is a big issue in here. So if the residents had more to do, and we're really pushing, it's been the sheriff's priority to get tablets into the jail. So tablets assist them to communicate with their families. They can communicate with their attorneys. They can get films and books to read, and they can do education programs. So I've divided the programs into 4 areas. One is literacy and numeracy and computer literacy kind of classes. The second area is pre-vocational and work readiness programs. The third area is what I call offence-related programs. So because people not yet convicted, you can't do sex offender or violent offender or family violence programs, but you can do offence-related programs like conflict resolution, anger management, drug and alcohol use. And then the fourth area is arts and culture. So we've divided it into those 4 areas.
How do you think that'll impact the residents?
Oh, it's going to be huge. I was walking my dog one day, and a man pulls up and he says, "Sheriff, I think you're on the right track." You know, I used to be in prison. I was in prison for years, and there are people in the jail who 24 hours a day think about how they're going to either get over on the jail or get over on the staff in some way. And so you got to keep people busy, give them hope, give them something to do. And I was like, yeah, so I knew we were on the right path with this. So making sure people have hope. You know, you think about when you're unhappy as a person with something that's going on with you and how that projects out on others. And we just want to make sure they're moving towards living, you know, the American dream, right? And not just keep coming back to this jail. I think we were close to 9 times people have on average been arrested that are in our jail. So we want to start really, really lowering that number.
And when you think about, this is a huge shift for staff, how is this new model being received as they work to implement it?
I mean, I think the staff, because we're so understaffed, you know, they're fairly exhausted. So for them, change is a big, big effort. Yes. And at the moment, they will say to me that it's not really that fair because, you know, the focus is on the residents and not them. So I don't think that they can see at the moment in the longer term, if the residents were more occupied, there'd be less, you know, trying to get at the deputies. Mm-hmm. And I do say to the residents, as the new deputies come in, please stop terrorising them, so that they'll end up running back out down the street. So it's actually, you've got to have a 2-way agreement and negotiation between the residents and the staff. And I really see the role of the Chief of Corrections is to do that balancing act between the two. And so it's really negotiating between those 2 groups to have some common ground about what they want to achieve.
On the last episode, we talked about mediation. How has that affected the complaints from residents and the grievances, and how has that been improved since you've been here?
So I was a bit shocked to see, I think it was 1,200 grievances a month or something when I first arrived, which is what made me think then I need to start having these pod representative meetings, so at least we can hear what the grievances are and come up with some solutions. The solutions are very slow though, because change is slow. And one of the big solutions is all the technology that's required and the tablets and those sorts of things. So we've got the grievances right down, but I think everyone is frustrated with how slow. People don't understand so much how slow change is. So it looks like nothing's happening, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes.
What were the grievances related to? What are they related to now?
Yeah, so the 3 main areas are sanitation, maintenance issues. So let's start with sanitation. So they're not getting the tools to clean. So I've noticed that the residents are very into cleaning and they want a clean environment, but we're not always getting the tools to them and the cleaning equipment. So for example, bleach, because what will they do with the bleach? So we're trying to sort that out through a captain's project. Then the second area is maintenance, so the taps might not be working, or they're just getting cold water and not hot water. So there's, or the vents are not working and there's no air. So there's a lot of maintenance problems in the building. It's just never ending, the stuff that needs to be fixed. And the third area was meals. But with the meals, we've improved the food. So I was a bit shocked that we're eating bologna sandwiches 3 nights a week. 2 slices of bread and a little sliced thin thing that's supposed to be meat, and that's what you had for dinner. So we've improved the food.
What have we done differently? I remember when I first came on, that was an issue.
I've eaten prison food all over the world, and I easily would eat it in Australia. I have never touched the bologna sandwich because they offered it to me, the staff, and said, try this, and I said, I can't do it.
So another development you did while first getting in was getting more case managers on board. What is that? What does a case manager do, and why does that help to move the system forward?
Okay, so when I first arrived, I looked at the recommendations of the Transition Committee and what the consent decree required. So out of that, I created something called a service logic model to create a safe, secure and humane jail. And what I wanted to do was reduce interpersonal violence amongst the residents and improve the well-being of both the residents and the staff. So that's kind of the ultimate goal. So one way to reduce interpersonal violence and improve well-being is to deliver programs, because I come from a country where programs are equal to security. It's 50-50 resourced. And so I thought, well, in order to do that, you need some tram tracks to run the programs along. So that's what the case management system is about. And when I came, there were only 3 case managers, and I saw in the budget there were meant to be 8. So we now got 7 to 8 case managers. What they do is they assess people as they arrive and look at their needs, what needs they require for re-entry in the community. So what they'll be doing is planning for a person's exit the minute they arrive. And they look at areas like drug and alcohol, treatment, mental health issues, need for accommodation, employment, finances, financial help. So they'll assess them at the beginning, and that will give us an idea of what the needs are in here and where we target the resources to deliver programs. And case managers also deal with day-to-day issues. Somebody can't get hold of their attorney. They say they're calling them, nobody's answering the phone. The family members ring in with concerns. So they're doing day-to-day nuts and bolts kind of problem solving as well. And they're there to supplement the deputies. So the deputies in direct supervision model would also be problem solving with the residents. But if the problem becomes more complex, then they can ask the case manager to pick it up.
And another program that's been important has been the wellness program for the staff. How has that been implemented?
Yeah, we started by making sure there are resources from a police psychologist for traumatic events that they experience in the jail, but we knew we had to look at them more widely. I get a number of requests to meet, and people want to just tell me what's going on with them. Dr. Birgden, I know, did a lot of that as the warden, and so that people want to need support just in their lives, and so if I want them to do this really tough work, I have to support them in that. And so our wellness program is all about that. We're just getting that started. In fact, we have a meeting today about getting the structure of it together to where we're going to have groups that give input to our consultant, who's going to give me put together some recommendations on wellness programs. We have EAP, and we encourage people to use that because it's free. It's free for them and for their families. So we encourage that, but sometimes you got to go a little further and just show people the way. So this wellness program will help with that. We have a whole gym that they could use. We want people to be physically well. We want to have nutritious food available in our cafeteria. So but good tasting also, because this is New Orleans, okay? So
You're not cardboard.
yeah, so we're just trying to find programs that that our staff will, look at and make decisions about to keep them well, keep them in a good mindset. This is tough work every day.
Yeah, it's tough at this level.
Yes.
And at the lower ranks as well. So, one thing we do want to discuss too, we recently reviewed the most recent Consent Monitors Report, number 18, which was released in October. It is reflective of a 6-month period from October 1st, 2022 to March 31st of 2023. And this is also the first monitoring report that was solely reflective of your time in office and not the previous administration. Did you have any initial thoughts about that report as it was released?
Yeah, it reflects a trend that was going on. So when we got into office, I think I talked previously about we were between 45 and 50% staffed, which is really, really difficult. There's just, you can't work from home in this business. We have to have people in the jail. That's the number one safety, that's the number one thing to deter incidents from occurring or having deputies on the pod. So that was problematic. But the former sheriff, the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office had a compliance director run the jail from 2016 to 2020. That was by court order. At the end of 2020, the former sheriff got the jail back and was running the jail. Almost immediately, it started going backwards. But the jail was only ever in compliance between 60 and 65% in full compliance in 10 years. Right? So that's not a great record. But it immediately started going backwards once it moved back under the former sheriff. So when I got into office at that low staffing rate and already moving backwards, we had some challenges as well that we've had to deal with when it comes to compliance. But that was part of our assessments when we first got in. And we found out our staff didn't know what the consent decree says and didn't know why they had to comply with it or what they have to do to comply with it. So that's a huge learning curve, and that's a huge training program that we have to put into place. So now that we have our compliance bureau in effect, and this is the first time there's ever been a compliance bureau, but I was at LAPD under consent judgment. I was the monitor, independent police monitor for the NOPD, and both of those organizations have had compliance bureaus. You have to have a dedicated team to helping you comply with that, and we have it now. And it's got a director, a permanent director, and it's moving in a great direction. And the monitors noticed that.
The report did highlight, though, that the overall rating improved in 11 areas, and provisions in non-compliance had reduced from 17 to 12. What will it actually take to get into full compliance?
It will take more deputies. I don't ever want to de-emphasize that, but it will also take training. And in a consent judgment, if you've ever had the document, it's 150 pages, something like that. You've got to break that down. It's a legal document. We've got to break that down into terms that our deputies, who are not lawyers, can understand, digest, and then implement. And so we'll be hiring a training manager soon who will help us do that, operationalize that. But it's a system. It's a system of training and then enforcing that, reinforcing that on the job. So our jail training officers who get our new deputies in there and show them how to do everything, they have to be teachers of that as well.
So do you really feel compliance is possible?
Oh, absolutely. I think within the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to be in really good shape in terms of compliance. I don't believe we'll be out of compliance with anything. But to get to substantial compliance, I'm going to say, I'm very optimistic and ambitious. I'm going to say 5 years. But it's a process because, again, and Dr. Birgden talked about this last time when it comes to culture change, 5 to 10 years to really change a culture. And, so it's going to take some time.
So there was some slippage in that first 6 months. We still haven't received the report for the current time frame. What do you think we've done maybe in the more recent 6 months to help shift us into more compliance, Dr. Birgden?
I think the uses of force, because when I arrived, there's meant to be a review board hearing, that reviews all the uses of force. So I recommenced that, I think about a month after I arrived, and just a lot more focused on why use of force was being used. And so it wasn't just accepted that you would use force, and there's more emphasis now on a planned use of force. So the staff are understanding it's better to plan a use of force if it's required, rather than rush in there to deal with the situation unless it's urgent at the time. And use of force is used only when there's a risk of harm.
And that's a cultural issue as well, right? And we've seen some, pushback from staff about that. But one of the things we saw were people breaking bones, our staff members getting their bones broken, tearing ligaments using force. So getting them to understand this is in your best interest as well to plan it, because planned uses of force almost always come out with no injuries to staff, almost always. So just getting them to understand that is a cultural change issue, I think. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
What are the items that would need to be met for us to be in compliance? What are some of those key things that need to be done?
The consent judgment is about violence in the jail, violence between residents, so trying to deal with that. Violence where our staff uses force on residents, those are a big part of it. So when we use force, it has to be appropriate. It has to be measured, warranted, so training them to do that well. And then you have to have processes in place to investigate it, to hold people accountable. And so those systems have to be in place. When it comes to violence amongst the residents, that's some of this change that we're trying to do in being a human services agency, where we treat their issues. If you have trauma, addiction, and mental health, we got to make sure people are being treated, that we're dealing with the what do you call it? Impulsive behaviour. Yeah.
Because if you create weapons to hide under your mattress, you've pulled the building apart to make shanks, and you've got it there for your own protection. But as soon as there's a threat, you go into fight or flight mode, and then and people with low impulse control, they bring the shank out, and that's how the stabbings occur. And I think the other area for the consent decree is the incident reporting. So the staff, we have just 1980s technology, and so it's a nightmare of paperwork every time there's an incident. So that's why we're pushing so hard to upgrade and get into the 21st century, so that they can just use handheld machines to talk into that can type the report and does it very efficiently. Because when you're understaffed and you're trying to do 10 things at once, it's hard to find the time to sit down and write a report. So we're trying to use technology to assist the staff to be more efficient in their tasks.
That's a good point. I don't know if we'll have time in this podcast to talk about how we're going to use these ARPA funds to upgrade our technology and become a smart jail. But we have been going through requests for proposal processes for the jail management system, so we can have real data for our community, but also it coordinates with these handheld tablets that Dr. Birgden was talking about, which will automate times. They can, again, speak their reports into it. They can take pictures of injuries or incidents. So that's going to be huge for us. We just finished that one. We're ready to get that rolling. It's going to take about a year to implement the jail management system, which will have those tablets. But the second request for proposal process we did was for tablets for the residents, where Dr. Birgden talked about them having educational opportunities, music, being able to talk to their families. A lot of the technology was broken when we got in here for them to call their families or video interact with their families. So that's huge. That is a huge issue in bringing down violence in the jail as well. And they can speak to their lawyers. They can see a doctor. So that's a big game changer for us, that technology.
And as we mentioned, this is sadly going to be our last time being able to see you, likely in person, because you'll be leaving us this month. But we want to, memorialize that. But also, what would the next person coming into your role need to be able to maintain and accomplish to be able to be successful in that role?
So I guess all the planning that's been done using a project management approach is for sustainability. So it's trying to leave a structure for that person. But I was thinking about it today because the Chief of Corrections is like a strategic role, and the strategic role should think 2 years ahead, looking into the future. And one of the things I was reminded of is my law professor in Puerto Rico wrote an article saying, play the believing game. So if anyone comes up with an idea, just suspend your disbelief for a moment or your doubt and imagine it's possible. And if you can't work out how to do it, then you can go back to being doubtful. But he calls it playing the believing game. So I think that person has to be very imaginative and creative to be able to see forward in time. And so in terms of moving the service towards a human service, which is the culture change bit that will take 5 to 10 years. So just knowing it's a long a long goal and a slow process.
So if we're playing the believing game, Sheriff, in 2 years, where do you see us?
Well, we are going to be a human services department totally. We'll have a resolution as to phase 3 and how we treat mental health in this city and inside of this organization as well. We've got some innovations coming. No matter what happens with phase 3, we want a great standard of care for medical and mental health in this facility. So we're going to be moving towards that. So I see that in the future. We see training, proper benefits, and pay for our employees, which is got to start. It's got to be job number 1 right there. So, and then the smart jail. That's going to be amazing, where we have all kinds of data to see how we're performing and to show our community. Give us so they can give us a grade, and it's going to be an A.
And we're going to ask you to grade us because we want your feedback. We appreciate our community, and this is a community-led organization with Sheriff at the helm. So look for this believing game to come true and be actualized in 2 years.
Can I say thank you to Dr. Birgden as well? I think that's really important. I'm a dog lover. She's a dog lover. People don't know when she came here, she had 2 poodle puppies. And she had to leave her babies behind in Australia to come here and serve this community. So I know that was hard, but I'm very grateful.
Yeah, they were only 1 year old. One was digging holes in the garden, the other one was eating the wall. And I left my poor husband with them, who never wanted dogs. So, yeah.
She's coming home, husband. Don't worry. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure myself working with you as well. So thank you for listening, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate your support. And as always, make sure you subscribe, listen, and also send us those emails. We want to hear from you.